Hello, folks, and welcome to lesson 4 of Miss Margaret's Guitar Show. Today we're going to focus on surf instrumental music, and we're going to have Mr. Kemp here do a demo for you because he is a surf guitarist extraordinaire and songwriter. So take it away, Mr. Kemp.
Okay, we're going to do a song by the Chantays called Pipeline. And it starts off the 14th fret of the 6th string, and you do what's called a glissando. And you actually want to palm mute that string when you do this, just like this. Okay, we're going to take it to the bridge section, and it starts on A minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. To G, to F, so that's basically the whole song. It just repeats the verse, and
I just added that part.
that's how it goes.
When would you use your tremolo bar in surf? Because in a lot of rock stuff, there's a certain technique, and I believe in surf, it's quite different. How would you use your tremolo?
So typically, if you do have a tremolo bar or whammy bar, as some people call it, you most commonly see it used on an open chord, like I was doing before. So if you hit an E minor, or for example, A minor also, and if you were at the end of the song, and let's say the song you're playing ended on A minor, so you could walk it up with different chord voicings like this.
And that's a very interesting guitar. Tell us a little bit about that guitar.
This is a DePinto Galaxy 4 Deluxe, and it is basically a Fender Jaguar with 2 extra pickups.
And those are neat buttons too. Are those pickup selector buttons instead of a toggle?
Yeah, this guitar doesn't have a toggle switch, so each button represents one of the 4 pickups. So I typically use the bridge and the neck pickup. So I have these 2 down, But if you want more of a like lead type treble sound, you can just go straight to the bridge pickup and nothing else.
And then how do you, with the tremolo, I know I don't use one because I play Les Pauls, electric guitars, thank you. I always had trouble with my tremolo. I couldn't stay in tune even with the nut lock stripped out, and I had a hard time, so I really don't like them. How do you maintain tuning? Is there a technique for that?
Okay, so there is one little trick that I know of, and it involves using a regular pencil. And what you need to do is the point of it and actually go across the nut where the strings connect. And what that does is it makes the string stay in place so it doesn't slip out of tune. And for the most part, that will keep it in tune. But on other style tremolo systems, like a Bigsby tremolo, for example, a lot of guys would go down, and then to bring it back up to pitch without going out of tune, you can raise it up a little bit, and that if it does fall, raising it back will put it back in tune.
That's interesting. So with surf, it's quite different than my style of playing with distortion and not too much gain, of course, because you want to hear the strings. What is a style of setting for surf? Pedals or your amp settings? How does that work?
Okay, so typically, the only effect you would really have is a spring reverb, and if you have a spring reverb on your amp, I usually set it to about 7.5 or 8. And then as far as the rest of the EQ, you don't need a whole lot of bass in the sound. So you put your bass knob on about 4, um, treble on about 7, and then mid range probably about 7 or 8, just to get that real twang. That's ultimately what you want for that music.
And what are some of the pedals that you use?
Basically, all I really use is a spring reverb, emulating pedal, if you want to call it that. It's Maleko Spring Chicken is what it's called, and it basically um, replicates the Fender Spring Reverb sound.
And then, is there a difference? I know my Les Pauls, Brian at Jams, who's a poet with guitars. If you ever need a tech, the guy is amazing and a great guitar player and the most kindest person. He's a father of two, family man, and he upped me to tens. And in my last setup for my Les Paul, what kind of strings do you use for surf? Is there a difference um, because of the style of guitar you play, or because of the style of music you play?
Um, for that, I was always familiar with 10 gauge strings, but I noticed a lot of these other surf guitar players went up a gauge and were doing 11 gauge strings. And what that does, typically when you have heavier strings, bigger strings, it will stay in tune better,
Huh.
especially if you're using the whammy bar, tremolo bar a lot. It will hold tune better. And when you go to your like your palm muting riffs, like we did before, you get that real thump.
And then I know, well, we live together, so I watch him change strings all the time and goes from round wound to flat wound. Um, is flat wound more of a jazz? Because I know Mr. Kemp also is a jazz player. And is surf a round wound or a flat wound, or do you? move around between the two depending on what kind of songs you're playing. Do you ever tune down, or are you standard tuning also for surf?
So when it comes to flat wound or round wound strings, it's really a matter of personal preference. And if you're going for that real authentic, like Dick Dale sound, you want to go for a flat wound string, and that won't really resonate. So, like, this guitar has round wound strings because I just think it sounds better on this guitar. But some of my other guitars, I have a Strat with 11 gauge flat wounds, and that will really help you achieve the true Dick Dale tone and sound.
And do you feel, do you tune down, or are you always standard tuning?
Typically in surf music, it's all standard E tuning, and if you want to get, into like a psychedelic surf or whatever you want to call it, experimental surf band or whatnot, you could maybe go drop D or you know, there's no real rule or limitation. You could also go half steps to get a lower sound. It's kind of up to the player.
What is drop D? Explain drop D, like maybe if we don't know what that is.
So drop D is taking your sixth string and matching it with your fourth string. So if you're playing a fourth string,
Is it an octave? It's an octave lower, huh?
excuse me, wrong string. So you want to match your fourth string and then drop the E down to the lower octave of D.
Okay. And I know a lot of rock musicians. I know Foo Fighters uh, dabbles in the drop D, which is really interesting sound. I never really experimented with that myself, but I had to work on a song for a student, and I was pretty impressed with what you can do musically, songwriting wise, to get a little bit of your chording, and it just enhances it. So I would encourage you to explore drop D, seeking out or just doing it and goofing around with making something up, and it gives a little bit of a twist to it. Now, do you also have a certain kind of pick that you play, a certain gauge when you're doing Dick Dale specifically with the alternate tuning? I mean, the alternate picking speed of, let's say, Miserloo. Would you need a heavier gauge? Would you change your pick to a heavier gauge for that attack, or do you play the same pick all the time, same gauge?
So what I do when playing surf, I typically use a Fender medium. It's kind of contradictory, but Dick Dale, for example, he uses a pick that is more like an extra heavy, and that's what Margaret likes. But I usually use a heavy gauge pick when I'm playing other styles like jazz or rockabilly or punk even. But if you use your Fender medium, you get a little more flexibility. So if you're doing like a Dick Dale Miserloo, makes it easier to do the double picking.
Show us a little example of that because that brings the point of alternate picking. We sometimes down, 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 for example, with the Ramones. I'm familiar with that because I was in the Hormones originally as Johnny. It was a lot of fun. And it has the attack, but with alternate picking, you can explore so many things at speed. So will you play us a little Miserloo?
Okay, goes something like this. Starts on the low E string.
Dick Dale, tell us a little bit about what's interesting about him being a left-handed player.
So when it comes to Dick Dale, he's left-handed, and back in the late 50s to early 60s, they didn't have left-handed guitars. So his only option was to play a right-handed guitar upside down. And that was also something that was done by Jimi Hendrix, because he was a left-handed player as well. And the crazy thing about Dick Dale's playing was that he never restrung it. So instead of having his low sixth string on the top, it was on the bottom. So when I've seen him play in concert before he passed away a few times, it was really hard to tell what he was doing because the strings are backwards. So he has his own unique way of, you know, manipulating his hand to where he can make that work.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. There's a lot of. I'm really big on technique, which is going to be our next lesson. I think it's very important. My first teacher, Link, who still teaches at Antone's in Newark, wonderful man, wonderful, very kind to me, insisting on my technique, which I'm very grateful for, and I pass along. But it's interesting how you will see players who are very accomplished artists who have different kinds of technique. And you might say, well, why do I have to do the technique properly if so and so? It's just a really great foundation to start with. But you may explore other ways, like Chet Atkins with the pick and the fingers, and artistically, we're free, but technique's very important. I know I tell my students, Wes Montgomery, who is a wonderful jazz musician, and he just plays with his thumb, no pick. His fingers are on the body, and he's just down, down, down with his thumb, which when you listen to his work, you would not believe he's doing that. So we explore other things, but I do believe that technique um, is very important to advance. You may find yourself at a wall if your technique is poor. So, excuse me, I do insist that we work on proper technique. Um, so that's my 2 cents. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this opportunity to explore the details in surf. I'm surprised I didn't become a surf guitar player because the guitar is the front, and I like to be the front. But I do like to write lyrics, and I do enjoy singers' passion of expression. But if you are so inclined as a player, advanced, medium, or beginner, surf music is a really great style of music to dive into because, one, you can hear your part. Oftentimes in productions, you have a hard time hearing the guitar. Although the song may be beautiful, that's great. But as a player, we want to be able to connect to what we're doing and have clarity as we're building our style. So check it out, people. Oh, what year did the song Pipeline? When year was it published?
So the Chantays were a band out of Southern California, and their hit song Pipeline was recorded in 1963.
Seems like a long time ago, huh?
Yes. And the funny thing about surf music is that it really started in about 1960 to 1961, and its heyday, or popular time, was from 61 to 63, and then the hippies kind of took over, and Steppenwolf and Grateful Dead and the Beatles, they changed music completely, and surf music was kind of dead. And there's even a Jimi Hendrix song. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but there is a lyric that he says where it goes, you'll never hear surf music ever again.
Until, wasn't there a movie? What movie should we watch?
Um, there was a few of those Hollywood kind of,
The
you know,
documentary.
beach theme movies that I'm thinking about where Dick Deal actually appears and is playing on the beach.
Really?
And I believe that's called Ride the Wild Surf. But
Bruce Brown?
or the Endless Summer, yeah, Bruce Brown. He made the film The Endless Summer, and the band the Sandals really kind of brought that into play with the song Endless Summer theme.
All right, that's a great movie. Now that we were have some time being at home, I encourage you all to watch Endless Summer. It was wonderful. Bruce Brown also produced On Any Sunday, which is about motocross in the 70s for all you X Game fans. It's way back in the day when it was much different than it is now. And it also is dedicated to Mr. Steve McQueen, um, who also is in the movie. It's really very neat. I think you should also watch that. So part of your homework is to watch those two movies. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Take care.